Thank you for joining us at India TV Presents CMO Week, powered by Nickelodeon Sonic. After successfully conducting 3 events under the All-Week umbrella, Television Week, Digipub Week, and Languages Week, we are here and pleased to announce the next one, CMO Week. To begin with, I'd like to thank our sponsors, presenting partner India TV and powered by partner Nickelodeon Sonic. Now introducing you to our moderator of the session, Anirban Roy Chaudhary. Hi Anirban.
Hi Abid, thank you.
Once again, thank you everyone. And before we start, can we have the AV please?
27 साल आपकी अदालत में आपका साथ जब सवाल मुस्कुराकर पूछे जा सकते हैं, चिल्लाने की क्या जरूरत? जब इरादा सीधे सीधे खबरें दिखाने का हो तो लोगों को लड़वाने की क्या जरूरत? इसीलिए मैंने इंडिया टीवी पर इन सारी बातों को ध्यान रखा। खबरों में, कमेंट्स में, सवालों में न किसी को बनाने की नियत, न किसी को गिराने की कोशिश। इंडिया टीवी पर शोर कम, खबरें ज्यादा।
Thank you. Over to you, Anirban.
Thank you very much, Abid. Welcome everyone. Edu-Tech and kids entertainment, it's a fascinating combination, and we'll see this marriage growing deeper, I believe. A lot has happened in this last 6-7 months to this Edu-Tech space, but that's where I would like to start with. I know we've talked about kids being locked and studying through Byju's and Unacademy and other platforms. But Atit, with you, I'll start with your opening remarks. Can you say where kids were, this Edu-Tech space was before the lockdown broke? Because we often attribute, I think, too much to the lockdown and less to the efforts that had actually gone in establishing Byju's to the level it was even before the lockdown. So just give us a sense of what it was before the lockdowns broke and after the lockdown, and maybe we can start from there.
No, sure. So see, the edtech space has been there for the last 4 odd years. Yeah, slowly and gradually, the segment of the student population, that cohort, was slowly and gradually adopting to online education. And nobody is saying, whether it is us or any of the other edtech players, nobody is saying that don't go to school. What everybody is trying to communicate is that come back from school, and if you spend 15-20 minutes on those very nicely created educational videos, it will make your concepts better. And once your concepts are better, then you will become a life learner. So that journey had started about 4 years ago. Now come 3rd week of March, and we went into a complete shock, and nobody knew what is happening. But one thing was certain. The only certain thing was that schools would be the last thing to open up, and nobody expected that this lockdown would run for 7-8 months, and we're still in a sort of a partial lockdown. Well, most of the things have opened up, schools haven't, some of our offices haven't. Yeah, what happened in the last 8 months was unprecedented, and nobody wanted it to happen that way, but it was just the timing which led to what happened. Everybody was expecting massive adoption of online education over the next 3 to 4 years. This type of involvement where 30-40% of students from the age group of standard 4th to standard 10th were expected to be doing hybrid education, school plus online, got compressed in 7 or 8 months. Things which were supposed to happen 3-4 years down the line happened in 8 months' time. And everybody was caught unaware. But fortunately, at least while the larger philosophy, at least in our organization, remained that we will ensure that there is no learning loss.
Okay.
Parents were anxious, parents were stressed out that this year has gone, what will happen to the academics and all those stuff. We were able to pivot, we were able to come back on the table and start live teaching exactly the way schools conducted live online teaching, and that was only 1% of the school population, because we send our kids to the best schools which money can buy, but that's not the representation of the country. Most of the guys don't even have a laptop or a mobile phone or internet connectivity. Teachers are struggling. They don't have content to teach. They have never seen a laptop screen to teach. Now, for all those set of students, which might be 95, 96% of the population, what's going to happen to them? So
Yeah.
in a way, all the education players realized this problem and created online learning. Well, online learning was there. They started with online teaching, exactly the way the A-grade schools are teaching online. That was
Correct.
provided on a national platform, on a common platform, where you just required a internet connectivity connect, and you have India's best teachers teaching you math, science, history, geography. So that has been a significant change. The good part is that people have got used to it, students have got used to it, parents have got used to it, teachers and the ecosystem has got used to it. So as schools open up, which is expected to happen around the next academic year, which is May, June, at least the sense which we carry or the belief which we have is that we will be having a sort of a blended hybrid learning. Schools will start, might not be 7-8 hours, might be 3-4 hours, and then 2-3 hours back at home doing some online sessions. Content or education content which can be taught online would be taught online, something which requires physical presence. For example, chemistry. You can't create a chemistry lab inside a house. That might be done physical, but history, geography, English, for example, can be taught online. So that's where the pre-post and expected post-lockdown.
I know. I'll come back to you with the hybrid to know more about the hybrid plan. But before that, I'd like to go to Amit. Amit, as Atit said, it was unprecedented, and there was this feeling that people need to now start online teaching. Teachers in the form of Byju's and others were available, but the students, as I spoke to a few professors also, they said that they were getting most of the content on their mobile phones, and that would automatically distract them. Maybe they'll look into a game there on the phone or some other thing. And that's where laptops started playing an important role. Now, at what stage did you even get in touch with your product guys and say, you know what, we need to think more about this online education. You need to think more about the microphone that we use or the camera that we use?
That's a good, hey, thanks. Great to be here. That's a good question, Anirban. I mean, I have a slightly, not such an exciting answer to that. And and the reason is that as a category, as someone who's been in the category, not just as Lenovo, but other players in the category, there's always been this belief that there is technology for content consumption and there's technology for creation and productivity, right? And all along, I think there was absolute clarity that if technology has to enable education, or we were to move to a hybrid kind of a system that Atit spoke about, you cannot do it on a smartphone. I think that was loud and clear. But as happens in many categories, there wasn't really a trigger. Kids were going to school, people were comfortable with the analog system of education, and there was no real push, either from, if you look at from the public system or from people who would spend their money. Now, very interestingly, I'll quote a couple of studies that we've seen over a period of time. By the way, PC penetration in India is still in low double digits, right? I mean, in early teens. Now, why is that so? And then when you start asking questions, you realize that in the list of durables, people would actually put a washing machine and a bike also over a laptop. And it was a question of both. It was a question of relevance and the right trigger. Is a laptop or a PC the right way, is a right enabler to the whole ecosystem? Of course, yes. But with the current situation, it just became apparent. I mean, it became real. And therefore, I think as Lenovo, what we really wanted to focus on was to say, okay, we've got these laptops, we've got these tablets to make sure that the right kind of products reach the right retail stores. People who are going to rush into the retail stores, do they get the right experience? Are those safe? A lot of people were going to buy, even if they were going to pick it up from a store, they were going to do all of that discussion digitally. How do we enable that? How do we do demonstrations virtually? How do we ensure that their questions that get answered? We launched a service called PC Pal, which was just to help people make the right selection of PC for themselves. So a lot of it was just about making the process easier. Because when this happened, I don't think as a CMO, I had this challenge, which I dealt with for the last 3 years or 7 years in the company of telling people, hey, why is a PC important for you? That barrier had gone away.
Okay. Okay.
But interesting stuff. I mean, like you spoke about webcams. Some of those features actually, which were not very used in laptops, suddenly became started to get used very heavily. So now
Yeah.
we're kind of learning, what's the impact, what's the experience been, and therefore how do we improve that?
I know while teaching to kids was an important part, the kids were running out of hobby ideas as well. They could not go to their store, they could not meet their friends, and that's where Sonali, Nick comes and plays a big role. I mean, giving kids something to at least feel refreshed. What was the lockdown period like for you? And I'll come to you more specifically about if there is something that Atit and Anirudh might do for you, but that we'll get to that later. But for now, what was the lockdown like? What is it that you have observed as a kid broadcaster?
So thank you, Anirban, for having me on the panel. So I would like to take off on a point that Atit spoke of. And when we suddenly stopped going to office in March, we never thought the lockdown would go on endlessly. So we almost had to pivot our marketing plans overnight. And it came at the cusp of summer, which is the busiest season for the kids category, where we would do everything possible to engage and entertain the audience through any platform available to us. And when I say platform, as kids marketeers, a large part of our engagement rested on experiential, below the line, and the on-ground touch and feel. And overnight, that was thrown out of the window. And we've had to adopt to the multi-screen approach. And I couldn't say that it is a huge boon, and a time like this where we've had so many of our IPs kicking in for us, and each toon forming such remarkable bonds with the kids, we had to actually decide how is it that we are going to make these toons available to the kids when they are cooped up in their houses. And if you look at the studies, the two TGs that were affected the most in the pandemic were the senior citizens and the really young kids who were suddenly locked into their little houses overnight. So we actually used our toons as the biggest ambassadors to inform, to enthuse, to entertain, and educate these kids all through the pandemic. There were very, very simple and strong insights like missing your best friends, and Motu Patlu is the best friend of a kid. And we launched something like a Nick Toon hotline, where a kid could actually call a toll-free number and share his jokes and secrets with the toons. So very, very simple yet powerful insights, and using technology for the greater good, and not just using tech for the sake of tech, because you can't really do that with a child. There has to be blended learning. There has to be a balance in screen time. There has to be a very, very right filter that we use as gatekeepers when we even use technology with kids. So yes, it's been a once in a lifetime occurrence, this pandemic, and we've also done very once in a lifetime campaigns in these 9 months.
Okay, that's great. Sudipta, I'll come to you for your opening remarks. But before that, to all our viewers, I'd request you please keep sending us your questions. I know we can't ask you in person with a microphone, but you can type it down and I'll get them answered. Sudipta, as we talked about the pandemic, I mean, that was also the period when advertising had gone down, even in news where the viewership was very high, and you had new categories emerging in advertising. Could you take us through a little bit, about the new set of advertisers that were there?
First of all, thank you, Anirban, for having me on the board, because I may be a completely misfit, because I'm a sales guy and advertising sales guy, and having an advertising sales guy in an Edu-Tech where majority of the real big players are around. I mean, people like Atit and all are around. I mean, thank you so much for having me on board. Having said that, yes, you're absolutely right. See, when we were into television advertising, there were two categories which were always considered to be not very television advertising friendly. One was education, one was real estate. And the logic which were always given to us by the advertisers were that, if I'm investing a couple of crores on real estate, I don't like to invest that 2 crores or 3 crores or 5 crores, depending on a 20-30 seconds commercial. And when it came to education, people, parents were very serious about their child education, and they've always said that, by seeing a 20-30 second advertisement, I don't want to put my child into any university or any course or institute or things like that. But this pandemic, I think not only pandemic, I think 2018 onwards, when Byju's actually led the way, and I personally thank Atit for this, Byju's for this, because you guys have led the way. Forget the fact that you are the #1 unicorn and topping the list and rocking, but you have showed the right path. And people slowly started coming into online education. People started smart classes and stuff like that. And slowly it started becoming a very important category for television, which it was not there. And this year, especially, the way things have gone up, and something very, very interesting is that I was going through some data, and 35% of the Netflix users, they have used Netflix for education, for getting information on different education stuff, and they went through some videos which were things like that. The overall video consumption has gone up. The education combined with animation and stuff like that, beautiful videos were made, and it became so interesting. I never liked a chemistry or a physics ever in my life. I've been a disaster in studies, but then even when I saw those videos and all, I felt, shit, if these things would have been available when I was in schools, maybe I would have learned these subjects much better. So having all these things put together, and then obviously the compulsion factor that you cannot move out of the house, and kids are locked in house. So this category has grown phenomenally. The kind of monies that we are getting from online advertising companies, as well as Edu-Tech companies, especially, be it Upgrad, be it Byju's, be it Unacademy and all, is mind-blowing. Byju's has always led the way here as well. And this Whitehead Junior, after acquiring this thing, this has gone like completely in a different tangent. And it's a very good thing to be here. Advertising fundamentally never went down, especially for news channel. Not even during peak pandemic, we were the only category where the viewership went up by some 3 times or so, which we have never seen in our entire career. So
okay, when you say advertising never went down, do you mean advertising never went down in terms of volumes, or do you mean also volume or the revenue, however we put it?
I'll tell you, there are few categories which had no other choice other than to stop advertising. Say, for example, a very easy name for me to come out with is automobiles. Now your showrooms are closed. Aapke sare showrooms band hai. People can't go and take a test drive. They can't buy any vehicle. A company like Maruti went 0 sales in April here. Just imagine. So wo category kabhi advertise nahi karega. But fundamentally, advertising ka requirement jo hai, the people who were spending less actually started spending more. Category shifted. If you see in detail, FMCGs and all were not used. They didn't advertise on news channels as much. Now we have FMCG's participation in news channel phenomenal. Overall basis, much better than last year. Previous years and all, and all categories came bouncing back, and August onwards, especially, all the categories started spending pretty decently. Maybe my experience is a little different than Sonali's, maybe because we are in news, so our demand, and we happen to be a very consistent, stable #2 channel for the category for last 14-15 years. So people do have that kind of trust on us. People feel that if they spend money and invest money on us, their pre-evaluation and post-evaluation of the deal will more or less remain the same. So they'll get value for money. So we always are in that consideration set. But on an overall basis also, people started advertising pretty well. Festival has been really good. And I think this is a fantastic time to be in. I just hope that this continues as long as possible.
Okay. Atit, coming back to you, You mentioned about this unprecedented growth of interaction, but that also might have come to you as a challenge because you were maybe had a different set of target audience. But how did the target group actually shift for you when this pandemic broke? And then what was the marketing challenge? Because you had to reach out to far more number of people at one go with limited medium because print was not functioning.
No, so the first thing which we realized is, so see, everything cannot be for business and profit. And at this particular time, at least the larger organization and all of us decided that we should ensure that there is no learning loss happening. And the year cannot be lost from an education perspective. So the first thing which we did is we made our entire content free of cost for 3.5 odd months.
Yeah.
And that got advertised. So top of the funnel grew beautifully. It was just trying to ensure that more and more people get to avail the online services because their schools are not able to provide it. And the only way we could have done it was taking away the cost associated with that. And that grew the category, that grew the number of people joining in every hour, every minute. And now, with things opening up, our belief is that these people have tried us. They've got used to the concept of learning from a digital screen. We are hoping that over the next 6 to 9 months, X percentage of this top of the funnel would convert and become paid subscribers. If that happens, it's going to be wonderful from a bottom line and a top line perspective.
Okay, that's great. Also, there's a question for you from Ashwini. It's quite specifically for you. What's your take on the polarized reaction to the subsegment of coding? Now, you also have a share in that subsegment, but what's your view on the reaction that coding has received so far?
No, I think it's phenomenal. So I'll tell you, I'll just talk about the last 15, 20 years. When we were in school, computer was getting introduced as a subject, right? We used to have half an hour of computer. And today, 15, 18 years, 20 years down the line, we cannot imagine ourselves without a computer, right? Same way, coding, robotics, machine learning, artificial intelligence, these 4 key things are going to be the bedrock of everything the next generation does. I wouldn't be surprised that over the next couple of years, coding becomes a regular subject in school. We don't know right now, but it can become, because everything is going to be digital, and the least what I need to know, exactly the way I need to know how to open a Zoom link, how to save a file or close a file, I need to understand basic coding language. I need to understand how to get things done. And that's exactly what this might happen over the next 2 decades. So yeah, in a way, it's not getting polarized. It's just adding to your skill sets. It is helping the child, because one part of the business is teaching you pure play academics, and the second part of the business is preparing you with life skills, which might be required over the next 2 decades.
Okay, that's great. That's great. Coming to you, Sonali, you said you are missing those points like mall activations and other on-ground activations. Now, Atit deals with a lot of your target audience. I mean, he has the kids coming and teaching. Is there some data that you can maybe insights, not data specific, because there's a privacy that he needs to take care of. But is there some insights that he could probably share with you, which would work as focus groups maybe for you, which Nick does a lot? Like you go for focus groups and you identify the characters that might work, and then you go and commission a show. So is there a common play right there?
I think there is going to be a stage now, and I think many brands are getting to that level now, where you'll see a different kind of collaborations and taking place. And there would be a lot of benefit that an Edu-Tech company would have from an entertainment brand such as ours, because we are experts at creating IPs, and ultimately it's the characters and the tunes that build that very unbreakable bond with a child. And what an Edu-Tech company brings on board is something that is that a child can't do without in today's day and age. And even when the pandemic ceases to exist, we are very hopeful it does in the next few months. We have reached a stage where blended learning will continue. And so even though schools would start, there would be a certain set of parents who would still be very uncomfortable sending their kids back to school. So these Edu-Tech is here to stay, I would say, and it's only a matter of time that a lot of insight that we can provide as content creators, as kid expert marketers, can feed into what a Byju's does and vice versa. There is a lot of expertise that Byju's has currently that we would be more than happy to collaborate with.
Okay.
But
okay, that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, but definitely in a different space, because when a Motu Patlu teaches something, it would be remembered by a kid forever, because they are indeed the kid's best friend. So yes, I guess we need to understand how the synergy would work seamlessly, but we are not too far from getting to that stage, in my opinion.
Okay, what questions? There's one question from Anu, and it's for both Amit and Atit. So Amit, plus you first take it. He's asking about the penetration of Lenovo in rural market, and would you be open to using free-to-air channels to reach out to your potential customers? Amit.
Yeah, I mean, look, it depends on the objective, the audience that one is trying to reach, and the economics of media. Yes, I mean, free-to-air channels certainly have a relevant role to play. But we also know now that digital medium is not something that is restricted only to some parts of the nation. Everybody pretty much has a smartphone in their hand as you go lower down. I mean, data costs are low. So, I mean, that story we all know of. Having said that, I think, therefore, my not so clear answer would be that it again depends completely, entirely on objectives. Who am I trying to reach? Okay. If I'm going to a section that seems media dark to me, and we aren't able to reach that audience with the right level of affordability or impact, and if free-to-air channels stack right up there on those parameters, absolutely open to that. But personally, I'm not. While I have my own beliefs and biases about new media, and I do believe that that increasingly companies have to adopt and experiment faster than if you want to be competitive and stay ahead. There is a role and place for every medium, and completely depends on what one is trying to do.
Yeah, Atit, your take on FTAs, and then I'll contextualize Anup's question a little bit, because I have a more specific question to you on when it comes to rural India, if we are talking about.
No, so see, it's all about, I completely agree with what Amit just said, that whether to use a particular channel or a platform for over here, the free-to-air channels, is up to the objective of that business. If the objectives are getting met, the communication is agnostic, or the platform is agnostic in terms of TV channels. So we all work with ratings, we all work with some amount of data. So today channel A is on the top, and so one will end up spending more money on that channel because it is garnering viewership. But if that becomes channel number 5, the share of spends will come down. So it's completely dependent upon the objective and whether you stand in the pecking order in terms of how many viewers or audiences you are getting. And if it's there, spends will follow.
Yeah, and what's your view of rural India when it comes to, when you look at it through your Byju's lens? Because I ask you this question because the challenges in rural India for students is different from what it is in the metros or the top cities. Here, even if there is no lockdown, you don't have an afaqs or an impact or a concept with its top faculties to actually help someone crack NEET for that matter. So it's a different opportunity in the rural space. So how do you look at it?
No, it's a huge opportunity. You just answered the question, because we sitting in Mumbai, Delhi, Bangalore, there are like dime a dozen coaching institutes, best teachers, tuition teachers, good schools. You step out 50 kilometers from your metro city and you will realize, you'll be shocked to see the infrastructure of our schools and where do those students get the right learning. And that's where the online education has taken shape the way it's taken shape. So going forward, as better connectivity, cheaper devices, easy accessibility is provided, which I'm sure that what Jio did in terms of driving the digital penetration, what folks like Amit through Lenovo, Dell, all these OEM players are doing in terms of providing access, which is affordable, is just helping the growth of the industry. And with education in our country being the only means to a success, yeah, you will eat a meal less as a father, but you will not compromise your child's education, and that's what matters. And once you're able to provide the ecosystem, I don't see a reason that's going to be a 10x, 20x, 30x growth over the next 5 to 10 years, and which is primarily going to come through rural India.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Atit, for summarizing it so well. A question for Sudipto. I mean, taking on from what Anup just said about free-to-air channels, where do you see news channels placed to actually promote this phenomenon of online teaching? Do you see it playing a vital role? Do you see the gatekeepers' trust being with the news channels?
I would like to understand the question a little more in deeper way. I mean, because news channels will predominantly be viewed for the news around the place. I mean, whether it's India or for that particular state. But see, there are situations where education as a category might be, connected with news channels. So what exactly you wanted to know, if you can make a
no, so I wanted to know from you very specifically, as Atit just mentioned, that, that there is an opportunity else in rural India as well, where, or also in the Hindi speaking markets where India TV would probably be a dominant player. But I'm saying that, do you have the gatekeepers' trust? You need the parents to say, you know what, Byju's is a credible platform and I would like my kid to get taught there. So do you see news channels, not only India Today, news channels as a whole becoming a good medium for them to promote?
Yes, absolutely. By the way, it is not India Today, it's India TV. But
India TV,
I would completely go with what Amit and Atit said, because see, if you go by the data, you will see that urban is already penetrated to the tune of about 100%. So there are multiple TV homes and stuff like that. But if you go by the 2011 census data also, it is 169 million. That's the kind of households in rural, and out of that, TV households is only 109 million. So if you go by that data and also combine that with what Atit and Amit said, is that rural is a huge chunk where you can get that, there is a huge scope of growth, even for any kind of viewership, even for television, and also in these any kind of categories, because penetration, because there's one thing which is very important, which has happened with pandemic, and I think it just makes sense to point that out here, is that there's a lot of lack of trust which has happened over this past 7-8 months. We are not being able to see each other across the table, or there are a lot of brands which are being seen while you are going to buy online, which you have never heard of. So it is very important for any brand to build their brand so quickly and so solidly that it comes in the top of the mind recall, and you try and expand in the rural areas, because next 3 to 5 years, the viewership and a lot of other things, the growth will come from rural. Urban is quite saturated to quite an extent. We kind of know each other कि कैसे क्या करना है नहीं करना है, but rural में there are a lot of penetration which will happen both in terms of smartphone, tablet, your laptops and stuff like that, and then it will your connectivity will grow because of the electricity which has reached across the country in different rural areas as claimed by the government. So obviously the the video consumption, TV consumption, these kind of things will also go up, and the tie-ups and everything will really work. People will be more careful about the brand, and they will go for it. They will go for it.
Okay. Atit, quickly before I go to Sonali again, do you agree that urban is quite saturated for a Byju's?
Not really. So Sudipto is talking primarily from a television perspective.
Yeah, right. Absolutely.
So, see, we are only 5 years old, 6 years old, and very, very nascent category. Just to give you a number perspective, there, and Sonali would be having the numbers more closely to her. I'm just doing some back of the envelope. There might be about 260 million students who would be, or 250 million kids who would be school going kids. Yeah. Today, we have about 75 million people who have downloaded the Byju's app in our entire 6 years of history. And then if you put all the education players together, it might be 110, 120 million. Yeah. So 50% of the market we have yet not reached. Out of that 120 million people who have once in their lifetime downloaded or used the online education platform, there might be only about 5.5 million paid subscribers.
Yeah.
So the headroom for growth is like 5 million to 260 million. And even if you slice and dice that between urban, rural, tier 1, tier 2, urban might be 5%, 10% penetration compared to 2-3% in rural India. So there is still minimum 90% headroom for growth.
That's great. No, I actually wanted it to be on record that the headroom for growth is huge even in urban and rural. How do you see it, Amit, in terms of urban, rural, when it comes to the penetration of laptops and PCs?
So, yeah, I mean, it's a long way to go, right? I mean, we're just getting started in India. If you look at the urban destinations, the urban markets, yes, of course, the penetration is decent, but again, there's a lot of ground to cover. I gave you the stats, right? Overall, PC penetration is in low, teens, and urban might be, in 30s, right?
Okay.
Again, but as you go into rural, there's hardly any penetration.
Yeah.
And when you also look at socio-economic strata or the lesser privileged parts of even urban India, they don't have access to computing today. And if you compare it to markets like, let's say, even in Far East Asia, markets like Indonesia, Sri Lanka, you'd be surprised. I mean, their PC is actually much, much higher than the PC penetration in India.
Yeah.
So a long distance to travel, but with the way the world is shaping, I think, as one of us said, it's very clear that we can't imagine life, day-to-day life today without not just one computer at home, maybe a computer per kid, or one PC per child, which was a vision of a program that ran many years back globally. And that's what people realized, that initially people said, okay, there's a work PC, maybe the child can use it for classes, and then they realized, no, that cannot happen. So they bought one PC, and then they realized, but two kids cannot really share the hardware concurrently. The experience on smartphone is not great. So the relevance is clearly established now. I think it just remains to be seen how fast does this change happen. Because I also want to be watchful of what happens now, what happens post the vaccine coming, right? It is, it's very clear that long term, this would make a big impact, but how fast would that impact happen? Would all depend on two things, of course, the vaccine, but secondly, also human behavior. I mean, while we believe that this is this whole new world and this whole new paradigm, I mean, imagine what happened when we went from lock to unlock, right? I mean, you move out into smaller cities, move beyond metros where there's a lot of control, a lot of education, a lot of awareness, and you'll be surprised. It feels like any other time of the year, and in a lot of places, I'm sure, I'm told, it feels like this never happened.
Yeah.
So. All of us know about that. I think it's only time can tell. I don't know whether, I don't know what the crystal ball has, but what I know is there will certainly be an impact on how computing is seen, how Edu-Tech is seen, how brands like Byju's are consumed. I'm certain there'll be a change.
Okay, we'll go to last phase, but just before that, one question for Atit, and it's from an anonymous attendee. the attendee is asking if you and Lenovo or other brands can come up with maybe scratch cards where you give offers to each other, like you buy a Lenovo laptop and get 1 month of Byju's free, something like that.
So I'm going to
So
call
do you
Atit
see room for
after
such
this.
partnerships?
Sorry,
I'm saying I'm going to certainly call Atit after this.
No, but we are already most of our kits, because once you subscribe, we send a physical kit, and that physical kit has a tablet.
Yeah.
More often than not, the maximum number of shipments which we do is the Lenovo tablet, which is inside the Byju's kit. So there is a partnership, but yeah, going forward, as we want to penetrate more and more people, and especially in markets where the reach is not there, it forms a great strategic opportunity for an OEM like Lenovo and a content creator like us. And of course, then using platforms like India TV, and then having Motu Patlu to talk about it. It's a phenomenal combination where all four of us can come together and work out a plan.
That's great.
Motu
That's
Patlu
great.
for sure. Motu Patlu for sure.
Sonali, we all want to know what will happen now as people go to kids, and you can actually give us some early indicators as some of the schools have opened in India. What's happening to the viewership? Is it do you see it going down, or do you see it's still stagnated to the spike that you saw?
So it has definitely plateaued to what it was pre-COVID. It had gone as high as 40+%. Now it is still in the region of about 20% higher than what it would be. But the viewership that you're seeing, touch wood, on the kids category is fantastic. And it just shows that there is a need to be entertained and engaged, and for this category being a stress buster. But yes, as schools start opening and many kids start moving out of the houses, time will tell how summer shapes up for all of us, because to a large extent, I think this unlock period is much more confusing than the lockdown period. Many are moving out in hordes, and many are consciously staying back because they are just so afraid of being infected. So I think it's a matter of time where it does settle. But I think the next 3 months, this fiscal will pretty much be the way it is now. Hopefully by summer 2021, when things are a little bit better, we could, it will stabilize to what it was. I don't see the spike continuing endlessly, to answer your question.
Okay. Okay. What will happen to the spike, Sudipto, when it comes to news? What's your sense as things open up?
News continues to, I won't say grow as such, but then it is very, very important that all the brands, or the kind of the fact that I was telling last time, is that there has been a little trust issue which has happened on this last 1 year. So all the brands would like to make them more trustworthy. They would like to occupy their clients' minds, I mean, the customer's mind space in a much more credible way. And while you do that, you would love to be seen on credible platforms as well. There are a lot of other things which needs to be taken care of. And while you build that credibility, because while I'm buying something online and I have not personally experienced that particular product or the brand, I would always love to go with the brands which are known to me, or somehow I have seen some advertisements and something of that sort. So the known brands will make a lot of difference in terms of creating trust and credibility. So brands would love to build those things. And जब ये lockdown खुलेगा, there will be a lot of things which will happen in terms of additional spends on certain categories. Few categories which were not doing very well on TV or on print and stuff like that will actually start doing well, and vice versa as well. Few categories will go down and they will not be spending as much because they are reeling under pressure of this last 1.5 years that they have gone through. Because it is not just lockdown, because there was a slowdown post 2019 Lok Sabha elections. The 19-20 year has also not been great. Things were not moving that fast and that great. So back to back these things, and then earlier your GST, and earlier to that your demonetization, all those accumulated effect will show up. I mean, it will change drastically quite a lot. And the biggest problem that I personally feel, or the biggest worry that I have, is that right now a lot of us, except for few categories or few people maybe. But majority of us, you can't see a 1 year, 2 year at one stretch. You can just barely see some 2-3 months, 4 months in the true sense of the term. You really cannot plan long term, because what will change, how it will change, how it is going to impact you. So many things are yet to be answered.
Yeah, very well summarized. Conclude. You know, we are the last a few minutes. Amit, what is your challenge? What is it that you think would be your biggest challenge as things open up? When I say your biggest challenge, I mean the category's biggest challenge as things open up more.
I go back to what I said, which is to be very, very watchful, and as Sudipto said, to be very watchful of how the consumer behavior shapes.
Okay.
There was a certain playbook and a certain way in which all of us behaved and lived and played when we were in a certain environment, and when the environment changes, which behaviors will stick and which behaviors won't, I think is something I'll be very, very curious, and my team, I would love to keep a tab of that.
Great. Two questions for you, Atit. One from audience and one from me. Somebody has asked, you, as you mentioned, Byju's gives tablets to the subscribers. What happens when the tablets are not returned after the course expired? How do you deal with such cases?
Sorry, if the tablets are not returned.
Returned after the course is expired. That is a very specific question for you. I can't pronounce the name. I'm really sorry for that, who asked the question, but it says that later they never returned back the tablet even after the course expired. How does Byju's deal with such cases? So if somebody, you send a tablet and if they don't return it to you, how do you deal with such cases?
No. So tablet cost is inclusive in the overall package, and it's a typical Android tablet. We don't manufacture a tablet. We buy it from Lenovo, and we install the Byju's premium content into it, and it acts as a tablet. It's a regular computer. So even after the 1 year subscription gets over, you have already paid for that tablet. When you have bought the premium subscription, the tablet belongs to you. So there is no case. It's not like a lease or on rentals.
Okay, it's included in the subscription fee that you charge.
Yes.
Yeah, and my question to you, with which we'll end, as a category creator, you have certain challenges. But as what would actually make you feel sense of accomplishment will come in, say, a couple of years later? What happens would make you feel that, okay, we have reached out to a good position in 2 years' time?
No, great question. Three parts. One is having the educational content in 12-15 languages of the top 12-15 languages. If you can do 20, then 20 dialects and languages put together. Our current content is only in English and some dubbed. One is that. Having the full curriculum with all the subjects. We currently have only math, science, and social sciences, but the other subjects in terms of English, in terms of extracurricular subjects like technical drawings, a lot of things. A lot of CBSE and ICSE schools have subjects beyond math, science, and social science. So full inclusive curriculum. And three is reaching out and giving it back to the country and improving the education quotient of the nation and making India a much more educative country than what it was in the past. If we are able to achieve these three things, I think we would have done something back for the society and something back for the students.
That's great. That's such a nice way to end this this CMO week. Before we sign off, Debashish, can we have the EV, please?
सत्ताईस साल आपकी अदालत में आपका साथ क्यों नहीं? जब सवाल मुस्कुराकर पूछे जा सकते हैं, चिल्लाने की क्या जरूरत? जब इरादा सीधे सीधे खबरें दिखाने का हो, तो लोगों को लड़वाने की क्या जरूरत? इसीलिए मैंने इंडिया टीवी पर इन सारी बातों को ध्यान रखा। खबरों में, कमेंट्स में, सवालों में न किसी को बनाने की नियत, न किसी को गिराने की कोशिश। इंडिया टीवी पर शोर कम, खबरें ज्यादा।
Sonali, Atit, Sudipto, Amit, thank you very much for joining me today. And it was indeed a pleasure talking to you. Thanks a lot to our viewers for sticking through the 1 hour chat that we had. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you so
Thanks.
very much.